Hello again. Well, the messages are still flooding in about Marcus, tributes and memories and so on. Keep them coming, and I'll post them on the forum with the permission of the sender. So one of the topics that has been discussed is the progress on the second book on neural-based training. And Slacky phoned me the other day, and he told me that the book was about 2 chapters short of completion. So it's kind of in limbo. If the guys manage to put together the existing material in some form, you'll be the first to know. Likewise, any other news or information about anything to do with Marcus or commemorating him in any way, I'll be putting on here and on the forum. So I've put a video up here which follows this, which I took in Sweden on the Mind's Eye course during Marcus's lectures, and he talked about when he joined the Federal Air Marshals and about how the training was and how it was structured and so on. And his service in the FAA FAM was very significant. He worked with a lot of very good people who became lifelong friends to him. And his book, Air Marshals, which was actually the first book he wrote, but it was the second book published, really within a fictional plot has a lot of reality. And I recommend, if you're interested in what he says in this video, follow it up by reading Air Marshals. So enjoy Marcus in person.
Everybody had shot at somebody. That was it. Even the women, and there were only 2 or 3 women. A lot of the women. Do you remember Lindy Collier? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lindy Collier, little bitty Southern girl, had killed 2 Colombian drug leaders when she was 2 Colombian drug dealers when she was working undercover for DA in a fight. They stripped her naked, were going to rape her. She took her gun away from her and killed the fellow. So that was the kind of crew that we were running, and it was a really good group. The training program at that time was in a state of flux, and after the 14 weeks of firearms training and all stuff, which at that time was on par with the FBI and so on, we had this series of scenarios. Now the scenarios were designed to test and evaluate you, and of them, 2 of them were designed to be non-survivable. Why? And then we could go on a whole debate about that, if they had designed that. Well, my personal belief is I don't accept that. I was put into a leadership position as a student. I said, I don't accept that. I mean, I didn't bust their heads about it. So what we did is we went ahead and we won both of those scenarios. Now, mind you, I was blessed. I had some great operators on my team. I had some very experienced guys and, a certain amount of luck. And we got through this. And so after that, the person in charge of the program kind of called me in and counseled me because I had not followed doctrine, but I had won the scenarios. And said, how did you do this? Infantry problem. That seems pretty simple to me. So kind of unwillingly, I was told that I would come back as an instructor. And I said, that's not going to work for me because I don't believe anybody has any business being an instructor until they've gone out and done the job. I said, okay. So they deployed me, and this was 1990, so right when Desert Storm, all that stuff kicked off. I spent most of my time between 1989 and 1992 overseas. And most of that, we worked undercover. The Air Marshal program was very different. We worked undercover on planes. We also worked undercover in airports. We also conducted operations with other organizations and entities overseas. And so it was a hard time. It was really good. But out of that, I was then tasked to come back. And my agreement with them was, I said, I'm willing to come back, but only if you let me do whatever I want to do. So they gave me 3 weeks of time. They gave me the resources of the entire federal law enforcement training facility in Lana. I had fully trained SWAT teams. And then what I was able to do was I was able to take some of these concepts that Dennis and I had talked about for some time, and we had experimented with neuro-based training, and I had an opportunity to test it. At that time, I was part of what was called informally a tactical training group. We networked regularly. We had guys from our intelligence organizations, special operations military organizations, the civilian special operations organizations, the FBI hostage rescue team, top SWAT team, and also a number of foreign organizations, and we exchanged and we did training. So I had a wonderful opportunity to get on the phone and pick brains with a lot of really high-speed guys that were a lot smarter than me. And so what we did was I had this venue, and so I had these students. I had them for the last 3 weeks of the training to do whatever I wanted to do. And so I designed and started experimenting with what was called, in its earliest rendition, this is like 1991 was the first class I taught, like around 91. That was the start of doing what's called accelerated learning or neural-based training. And the concepts of that grew out of some of my personal work and research about how to make people more efficient under stress. So again, long story short, I did that, and those classes that rolled out there exceeded all previous performance standards. And again, we had good people, but the student body had changed. We had gone from experienced operators to young people, very intelligent, very fit, no experience. Some of them had never had physical contact, they never played contact sports, fight. We were mandated to have a certain percentage of women in the program, and no disrespect to them, because like I said, there were some really solid women in the whole program, but it was a different time. So I had to adapt that training, and one of the goals that I had to do is I had to figure out a way, how can I take this young, intelligent, inexperienced person, and in 14 weeks, turn them out so that they can go into a very demanding environment where you're working undercover as part of a small team, prepared to do extreme violence at little or no notice, and to operate in that sense internationally as well. So I had a chance to experiment with a lot of this. And then what happened was, my students, they were great. They came out and they kicked ass. And they exceeded all the previous performance standards in shooting, and they did very well. They kicked ass in all the scenarios, including the ones that I didn't want to run, but I was ordered to run about supposedly non-survivable. And when I was asked about how does this work, the credit belongs to the people doing the work. But my position was, as a person who is facilitating the training, is it's better to give people a protocol to think through for them to create the solution than for me to hand them a solution that works for me. This is something important as we start talking about neuro-based training, is that you may have a solution that works wonderfully for you, whether it's firearms, solving a tactical problem, hand problem, a strategic problem, whatever, okay? But just because it works well for you doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work well for your partner. The difference in terms of instructional approach for neural-based training is not that the instructor knows it all and dispenses it to you. What the instructor's job is to facilitate experiences that you learn through. Do you guys understand the difference?